All right, everyone, good to see you. If you are watching this video, you are probably needing a little bit of guidance with these conversion unit rate problems. So in chapter 1, lesson 3, we have been working at converting unit rates using a train track method. It looks like train tracks. It's kind of a nifty way to set up our unit rates, to use them to convert whatever we want to some other equivalent type unit. So I'm going to show you a couple of different examples. And I'm using a worksheet that we usually use for homework. So you might have actually the answers down, but maybe you don't understand how we got them. So stick with me here. Let's take a look at this first one. I'm going to do number 7. Number 7, one of the first things I do is, it's really nice that it's written out this way for us, because we can now look at these problems and say, okay, I'm starting with 50 miles per hour, and what am I ending with? I need to end with feet per hour. So we need to look and see what's changing. So I look at my numerator and my fraction here. I'm going from miles to feet. So I'm going to need to know how many miles are in, how many feet are in a mile, or whatever that unit rate is that shows the relationship. Now, when I look at my denominator, I've got hours and I'm changing them to, well, I'm not changing them at all. So I really only have to worry about changing miles to feet. That's really nice. So when I set my train tracks up, what I do is, in the beginning, I start with what they give me, 50 miles per hour, 50 miles on my numerator per, and it is inferred that it is 1 hour. It's miles per every 1 hour, not 5 hours, 7 hours, or 8 hours, because then it would be written there. This is a unit rate for every 1 hour. So I write this here, and then I think, okay, I want to change my miles to feet. What do I know about miles and feet? Miles need to change to feet. I know that in 1 mile, there are 5,280 feet. How do I know? Because I've used that number about 19 times in the last 4 days. So it's just stuck in my brain now. So I'm going to use this unit rate to help me to change miles into feet. When I look at my train track problem, I'm trying to change miles. So in order to get rid of the miles that I have in my numerator, I have to get miles in my denominator. That's because when I go ahead and multiply across and cancel these out, the miles are on the top and the miles are on the bottom. So miles divided by miles is just 1. It's just like if I had a 50 in the numerator and a 50 in the denominator, they would cancel out. 50 divided by 50 is 1, and we know if we multiply anything by 1 in our problem, it doesn't change anything. So we can really use this to our advantage and manipulate these numbers. They work for us. So we're getting rid of the miles. But first I need some numbers. For every 1 mile, so I'm going to put my 1 down here with my miles, there are 5,280 feet. Okay, now that I have what I need and I've changed all the things I need to change, I've changed miles to feet using this. It's going to change it. It's going to take 50 miles and multiply it by feet and give me feet. And I don't need to change my hours. Now I can go ahead and multiply across. So I'm going to multiply the numbers in the numerator. 50 times 5,280. That's going to give me this number, 264,000. And what unit do I have left in the numerator? Feet are the only thing that are not marked out. And that's good, because look, feet in my numerator, I need feet in my numerator here. That's great. And the denominator I'm going to multiply as well. But because I have 1 times 1 is just 1. And I'm left with hours, because my miles are marked off. So now I have changed 50 miles per hour into feet, and it is 264,000 feet per hour. And that is the number I write up here. You always, 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 always have to have your units. And in one of these problems that's set up like this for you, you can just write the number down because the units are there. But if it were not that way, you could write it this way, or you could write it 264,000 feet per hour. Kind of like what it's written up here. You could just write it out that way. All right, let's do one where we have to change more than just 1 unit. So number 8 has miles per hour, and it's being changed to feet per minute. So our miles are being changed to feet. Well, no problem. We just did that up here. We can do it again. And our hours are being changed to minutes. Well, I know a little something about hours and minutes, so I think we can get this going. Set up our train tracks. This time we're going to need 3 tracks. One for what I start with. I start with 36 miles. And that is happening in 1 hour. You might be in a car or something, 36 miles per hour is the speed you're traveling. And I want my miles to turn into feet. So let's start there. So my next one, I've got miles and feet. Where am I putting my miles? Well, it's kind of the same as this problem up here. Now, by no means am I saying that your miles always go in the denominator, because they don't. Sometimes you need to have miles in the numerator to get rid of some other type of unit. So don't think that it always looks like this. It's completely dependent on what we've got and what we're changing it to. So since I've got miles on the top, to get rid of those miles and cancel them out, I'm going to write miles on the bottom, and then I can write my 5,280 feet at the top. Now let me kind of tell you a little something, because this is where some people make errors. They're thinking about all the things they have to change. So they get to this first train track, and instead of focusing just on changing miles or just on changing hours, doesn't matter which order you do it on, they mix them up and they put like 5,280 feet per 1 hour. And that's weird, because there's not really 5,280 feet an hour. There are 5,280 feet in a mile. These are both distance measurements. There are distance measurements, time measurements, and capacity measurements. So every train track after my first one that sets up my problem, every train track is going to be an equivalent unit rate, which means even though the numbers are different, these two things, the top and the bottom, are the same thing. Basically one. There's one. 1 mile is the same as that. They're different numbers, but they're the same value. They equal the same thing. If I take a measuring tape and pull it for a mile long, and I take a measuring tape and pull it for 5,280 feet long, it will end in the same place. So each one of your train tracks is just a new fact that we know to help with our conversion. So we've got our miles. So let's cross off our miles and our miles. Next, we're going to change hours to minutes. And I know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour. Some people like to actually write out their units to the side, their unit rates, and that's fine. That way they're there for you when you need them. Your brain works a little bit less. All right, I'm not worried about the feet here. I am now looking at hours. I need to change hours to minutes. I need minutes in the denominator, okay? So where am I going to put my hours to get rid of the hours? Well, the hours here are in the denominator, so I'm going to need them in the numerator so I can cancel them out. And I'll put 60 minutes on the bottom. There's two reasons I know that. One, I need to cancel these out and get rid of them. Two, I need minutes in my denominator. And the only way I'm going to get that is if I put minutes in my denominator, right? I put my feet in my numerator, my feet in my numerator. And so those are two checks that help me to know that I put them in the right place. Don't just willy-nilly cancel and force them out. You have to have one on the top and bottom to cancel. Okay, now we can go ahead and multiply. We're going to multiply across the top. So I have 36 times 5,280. I'm not going to do times 1 because it's just going to be the same number. I've got 190,080. And what's my unit left on the top? Feet. Well, that's good because that's what I need up here in the numerator. And on the bottom, I have 1 times 1 times 60. I don't need a calculator for that. That's just 60 minutes. And that's good because that's what I need here. And that's how I know I've done my job, when my remaining units are the ones that I need for my answer. Well, now this is a little different than this problem. This problem, it was already a unit rate with 1 hour in the bottom, but this is not. This is feet per 60 minutes, and I need feet per 1 minute. So of course, to get rid of the 60 down here, the rule is if I do anything to the top and bottom the same, divide or multiply, I'm going to have an equivalent fraction, so I can manipulate those all I want. 60 divided by 60 is 1 minute. And then I'm going to take my product here, and I'm going to divide it by 60 to get how many feet are actually in 1 minute. And it's 3,168 feet per minute, not 3,168. Who knows what that even means? You have to have those units down. So 168 is going to be the answer to that one, which is awesome. I want to show you kind of a funky example, but I really want to show you what I do with my word problems, because word problems they get confusing. There's all these extra words and we need to figure out what information is important. So when I go down, I mark up my problem like crazy. It says the winner in a recent Los Angeles marathon ran 26-mile race in 2.23 hours. Now, I've already underlined it for you. Sometimes it's not underlined, but I always, let me use a red pen here. I always mark up my rate or what I'm needing. That sounds like a rate to me. I instantly go, oh, that's 26 miles over 2.23 hours, 2 and 23 hundredths of an hour. And then they say yards per minute. another rate, yards per minute. If they ask me, how many yards per minute did he run? So my answer is going to be yards per minute. And then, of course, it tells me to round to the nearest hundredth. So I'm going to actually write out my problem like this so that my brain doesn't have to look back, find the right words and the right stuff that's in full non-abbreviated form and get confused. I don't want to get confused. So I'm just going to actually write this out in the form I'm used to. So I'm going to write 26 miles. Now, don't freak out that there's a number in my denominator. No big deal. Just write the number in your denominator. I mean, it's just going to multiply across the bottom like it would if it were the number 1. So 26 miles in 2.23 hours. And then I'm going to change that into yards per minute. Okay? Now, this is great because I can see I want miles to yards, which is a special number, and I also want hours to minutes, which I already talked about, okay? Now I can make my changes. I'm gonna need 3. If you're not sure how to figure out how many of these train tracks you need, you're gonna need 1 to start and then 1 for every change you're making. That's it. And even if you don't know, you can just start with a train track and add 1 as you need them. Oh, I need to make a change, better get a train track. Oh, I need to make a change, better put another one in. And if you put too many, just cross it off, no big deal. So this is 26 miles in 2.23 hours. Yes, write it down exactly how it is up here. Great. Now, in the red, I'm changing from miles to yards. And again, we're putting 1 mile in the bottom. And I know that there are 1,760 yards in 1 mile. And so it's just something that I know. It's just the truth. These two things are equal. They equal each other. So I have miles and miles across from each other to get rid of them. Good, because I need them gone. What I need are yards in my numerator. Yes, that's why I put it in the numerator. Next is hours to minutes. Well, I just did some hours to minutes. Kind of the same thing. I have hours down here, so I'm going to need hours up here and 60 minutes up here. Now, again, it's not always going to be an hour on the top and 60 minutes on the bottom. It depends on if you may have had minutes here to change to hours and it would have been flipped. So make sure you pay attention and you ask, where do I need my hours to be so that I can cancel out hours divided by hours? That's just 1. And so that I can leave minutes in my denominator. Now you're set. Let's multiply these out on the top and the bottom. I've got 26 times 1760, and that's going to be 45760, 45,760. What's left up here? Not miles, not hours, yards. Oh, good. That's what I wanted. And then on the bottom, I've got 2.23. Yeah, go ahead and multiply that by 60. And that's 133 8/10 minutes. Again, this isn't a unit rate. So we're going to need to divide by our denominator to get that unit rate. And that's going to leave us with 1 minute on the bottom because I need a per minute answer. And on the top, I'm going to have to put back 45760 divided by 133.8. It's going to be 342. And we're supposed to round to the nearest hundredth. And since there's nothing in the hundredths place and there's a 2 here, it's going to stay 0 because that 2 is very close to the 0 in the first place. So I'm just going to leave it 342 yards. And that's your answer, 342 yards in 1 minute. All right, hopefully these examples were helpful for you. If not, you know what I'm going to say. You need to go to connect.mcgraw-hill.com, and you need to go to that website, put in your ID and your password that is probably on a sticker in your agenda or on a piece of colored paper that talks about ConnectEd in your binder. And then when you get in there, you need to click the menu at the top, click resources, or just use the drop-down menu to go to Chapter 1, Lesson 3, and you probably want to hit up a tutorial. Now, it's not going to use the train track methods. It's going to look a little bit more like this, but that's sort of like train tracks, isn't it? I mean, kind of the same, similar type of a thing. So, so that tutorial is going to give you some examples of how to work these out, more examples. You also have extra practice problems in your book, because I don't ever assign all of them. There are also extra practice problems here in ConnectEd. There's also what's called a check, which is like a mini quiz. on ConnectEd. You can do that for any lesson, and there's one for lesson 3, and it'll give you a bunch of these problems. You can do them, it'll grade it for you, and it'll tell you what you got right, what you got wrong, and how to do them. So there's lots of resources before you need to search anything on YouTube. All right, happy converting.